Hello, America. Welcome to the Ben McCoy Show, documenting the decline of Western civilization one podcast at a time. Glad to have you on board. All right. It's been a couple of weeks since our last show. And as per usual, a lot going on out there that we need to discuss. At the top of everybody's mind right now is this student loan forgiveness plan, this ill-conceived student loan forgiveness plan, brought to you by the brain trust at the Biden administration. And I'm gonna talk about this from a couple of different angles. At no point will I defend this idea because I think it's a terrible idea, the way that it is, the way they're trying to execute on it. I do want to talk in general about student loans and some of the other issues surrounding that entire world that a lot of people aren't looking at right now. I see a lot of outrage, a lot of understood outrage by conservatives, especially about this forgiveness program. And I don't disagree with that, to just cancel the debt of a lot of people that meet a certain criteria while ignoring others and dumping that debt onto taxpayers who are in a lot of ways, in a lot of cases, in a lower income bracket, to shoulder that burden. It's egregious. It's unbelievable. And that's what's going to end up happening. Let me just go through some of the facts of this plan. First of all, there's no real, it's ill-conceived from the get-go, how this came about. It's kind of like Biden waves his magic wand and says, here's what we're going to do, but there's no real plan for execution on this thing. First of all, Congress controls the purse strings, not the executive branch, not the president. So how he's able to even do this is a big question, because it is going to end up affecting the tax rolls of the United States and the money going out, because the UPenn Wharton School of Business did an analysis on this thing, and the debt cancellation alone is going to cost upwards of $500 billion to American taxpayers. The president does not have the authority to do that without congressional approval. It's just not. That's just not the way it works. We don't have a dictator. We have a separation of powers, and the House has been given the constitutional authority to control the purse strings of the United States government. And this is not a bill that's been brought forth by the House. This is just an edict by the President of the United States. And I don't think that it could pass judicial review. Everything seems unlawful these days. So I don't know if they're even going to get that far, if it's just going to take effect because they said so, and they control everything. And who cares about playing by the rules anymore? It doesn't seem to matter anymore. So we'll see how that goes right off the top. It doesn't seem like this is even a legal exercise that the president can even do. I've been looking it up and reading about it, and I can't find anybody explaining, oh yeah, here's why he's got the power to do that. Now, he's got the power to issue executive orders as the president that, when it comes to spending money, don't have any real teeth, but can identify areas that he would like to focus on, or like the Congress to focus on, or he can direct his different departments to do certain things. He can direct the Department of Education to do certain things. But as far as do something that amounts to levying a tax increase on the bulk of America, that's Congress's job. And they do a great job at that, by the way, of dumping tax increases on America. But anyway, he doesn't have that authority. Now, what else? The details of this thing are completely unclear as to the different components, such as the income dependent repayment plan, the IDR, which has been in place for a long time with student loans. And that's a good component of it. When you borrow money as a student, and then struggle to pay it back, you can get on an IDR plan, which means that your payments as you repay your student loan, it will not exceed a certain percentage of your income. So if you went back to school, got a degree, and expected to make X, and it didn't really work out that way, which I'm going to tell you a personal story in a minute that'll kind of flesh that out a little bit. You can qualify for an income-dependent repayment plan, which means you pay back your student loan at a rate no more of a certain percentage of your income, so that you don't get underwater with your payments. And that's a good plan. That's been in place for I don't know how long, a long time. But this ill-conceived Biden plan is completely, there's no details as to how it impacts that structure that people are working under right now, and how it will affect it in the future. As far as how that works. So let's see what else here. I got some bad notes here that I'm trying to translate to myself that I myself took, and I got nobody to blame but me. Let's see. And the Wharton School of Business found that these changes to the IDR could result in a burden upwards of $1 trillion on taxpayers, depending on if it'll include future borrowers or not. That's a big question right now. If he's going to wave his magic wand and forgive student loans for existing borrowers, what about future borrowers? I mean, how's it going to impact them? What about past borrowers that already paid off their loans? I mean, how unfair is it to them? The Tax Foundation, which I talk about a lot on this show, which I really like the work that they do because they are not tied to a political party or ideology. They just do honest work with big calculators, figuring out how everything affects our taxes. And they found in their analysis that the Biden plan will make inflation worse. They don't say it may make it worse. It could make it. They said it absolutely will make inflation worse. In fact, it's going to hurt the deficit by more than $350 billion, fully offsetting all deficit reduction resulting from the Inflation Reduction Act that was just signed recently. We talked about that on the last show. The IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, that Biden signed. That's another ill-conceived idea that we talked about, should be called the Inflation Producing Act. And this student loan thing is going to completely, any gains that would have been made from the IRA, this is going to offset that completely. It appears that borrowers who benefit from the plan will not incur federal tax penalties, but may acquire state tax penalties for forgiven debt. That's another issue that's completely undiscussed at any level. Nobody really knows how this is going to affect their taxes. Now, the Tax Foundation, their conclusion is that the Biden plan is beneficial to some people, but it absolutely will add to the national debt and worsen inflation. In addition, it sets a new precedent and expectation for further debt forgiveness, which would further increase debt and inflation. It may also push tuition costs higher as more students treat loans as grants, expecting it to just be taken care of by Big Daddy at the federal government. This is bad all the way around. Nothing good here. Now, what I want to discuss a little bit, because I myself am a victim of the student loan process in a different way. There is a class action lawsuit going on right now that names dozens of these online schools. ITT Tech was a big one, the Phoenix, University of Phoenix. You've heard of these places for the last 20 years. They became big business out there. And a lot of these schools defrauded students, and I'm one of them. I went back to school in the early 2000s. My career's been in marketing. I decided I wanted to get a marketing-focused business degree. And the online thing was the only thing that made sense for me because I had to work all day and work for a living. So I wanted to do online school, which was very convenient for me. And I actually did very well in that environment. graduated with honors and everything else, and I had to borrow money to do it. Well, the reason I signed on the dotted line was because I was sold a bill of goods before borrowing the money to go to the particular school that I attended, having to do with job placement, expected income, these sorts of things were guaranteed to me by the school, and none of that ever came even close to fruition. There was no job placement program at all. They didn't even have a department that handled that. My income has never reached the levels that they said that it would with the result of my degree. In fact, I went for many years unemployed and got in way over my head with this and this sort of thing. I did the IDR and all the, the different programs, deferment and everything else. And it turns out that finally, some people brought a lawsuit, which I am part of that class. And it names my school, among dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of other, tons. I saw the list. It was huge. Of these schools that defrauded students based on false promises. And they are it looks like there's going to be a settlement, basically. The judge is very much in favor of the class's claims that they were defrauded. It's looking very good for us and very bad for these schools. And the proposed settlement is already in the range that would completely forgive the balance of my loans and everybody else that's involved, that matches certain criteria. There's certain criteria that you have to match to qualify for the total forgiveness. Now, this is not shouldered by taxpayers. I want to make that very clear. This isn't some White House plan. This is a lawsuit. These schools will be paying the bill. So I'm not one of those ones where the conservatives are mad at, oh yeah, you don't pay your student loan bills and now the taxpayers have to pay the bill. That's not me and the people that are part of this lawsuit. We were victimized, and it looks like hopefully, everything could go south. You never know until the final judgment is in, but according to everything I'm seeing, it looks like if nothing else, there will be a settlement, a huge settlement. And that would pay off the balance or cancel out, or however you want to look at it. The schools would have to eat the balance of these student loans that were under these false pretenses, which I am one of. And yes, I still have student loan debt, a lot of it from the early 2000s. It never, I did what I could to pay it and got in a lot of trouble financially because of that very issue. There were many times I said, if I'd have known that this was going to happen, I would have never gone back to school and tried to increase my education and get a degree and try, because you got to think about people like that. All they're trying to do is go back to school to make themselves more employable and to enter a higher tax bracket, income level, to be a more productive member of society, make more money, yes, but pay more taxes. That's what happens when you make more money, you pay more taxes. So, it's different from something like credit card debt. And I've never understood. I can't explain it to you why somebody can get a credit card and irresponsibly go out there and buy TVs and boats and everything else under the sun that they want with their credit card and then say, oh, you know what? I don't have the money to pay this back. I'm just going to file for bankruptcy and have it all wiped out. That's irresponsible debt. And you can file for bankruptcy and get that all wiped out. Student loans, on the other hand, for people who are, young professionals or whatever, trying to increase their education and go to night school or take online classes, and then things don't work out like they had planned. This isn't someone that set out to defraud anybody or like the person with the credit card irresponsibly. This is someone simply trying to become a more productive member of society, get a better job, make more money, pay more taxes. So it's not exactly the same thing. So if anything, I wish I could urge my conservative friends out there to think about it a little bit from multiple angles. That not everybody who can't pay back their student loan. Now, I got to say this is not a defense of Biden's plan. Let's compartmentalize what we're talking about here. His plan is a joke. It's a terrible, terrible plan. I don't support it in any way. But I want you to think about people who maybe got into a position trying to go back to school and were sold a bill of goods and were not able to get in the type of income that would allow them to pay back their student loans on time, and are looking for any amount of help that they can get. A lot of the people, see, it hasn't escaped me that a lot of the people complaining about, these irresponsible borrowers, you take out a loan and look what you did to yourself. You can't pay it back. A lot of these people went to school on their mom and dad's dime. I know that for a fact. I've seen some of these people complaining. I mean, you grew up in a position where your parents had money set aside for you to go to school. You went off to school and they paid the bill. You were never in that position. And it kind of irks me a little bit to hear people talk about how, these students, now some of them have been irresponsible and completely reckless and just never had any intention in the world to pay back their student loans. They just got the loan, got as much as they could, went to school and said, to hell with it, I'm never going to pay it back. I don't care. I'm sure there's people out there like that, but you're better off getting the credit card and buying the TVs and everything else if that's your mentality, and then filing for bankruptcy, not trying to go to school and get an education and become a more productive member of society. I just don't think that characterization really fits, the broad spectrum of students or past student loan borrowers out there. There's certainly, maybe there is some irresponsibility involved in it. Maybe some bad luck, maybe a lot of the other things that we don't know about on a case-by-case basis. So I just don't like, what I don't like is having student loan borrowers all being characterized and painted with the same broad brush. Oh, you're just irresponsible. You couldn't pay it back. And now, I just don't think that's a fair characterization, because you don't know what you don't know. And people like myself who were actually defrauded by an accredited university. That's one segment of the population. Another thing that we need to look at is President Trump's education secretary, Betsy DeVos, was a nightmare, okay? Conservatives tend to lionize President Trump, and I've been guilty of that myself. And, I love Trump. If he ran again, I would vote for him. But that doesn't mean I'm going to turn a blind eye to absolutely every part of his administration. Betsy DeVos was a disaster. And one thing that she did, among many things that were disastrous, the Department of Education Student Loan Division has different, like I told you before, the IDR, income-driven repayment. There's lots of different little plans and things that people can sign up for and do to get some relief with their student loan payments, have it deferred or have the interest rate cut in half. And there's just all kinds of different little plans and programs that the government has put forward that's been there for years for borrowers to take advantage of, to help them in times of financial crisis. So they don't get underwater, so their credit doesn't completely get torn to shreds because of student loans. And while Betsy DeVos was in office, there were tons and tons of people signing up for one of those. I can't remember what the program was called, but one of those programs to help with with the loans. And they were just ignoring the applications. Her administration, the Department of Education, was completely just ignoring or sidestepping or just throwing into file 13 all the applications from the borrowers for this plan. And they were legally obligated to review and rule on each application. That's part of their charter. It's in the law. The Secretary of Education must review each application and give a timely ruling, and they weren't doing that. They were throwing them in the garbage, getting rid of them, ignoring them, just in permanent limbo. And that was part of what brought about this lawsuit that I'm involved in. And when I say involved, I'm part of the class. I don't have anything to do with talking and meeting with the attorneys or, I don't, not in the courtroom or anything like that. Just, class action lawsuits. You have a class. It's made up of a ton of people. I'm part of that class. So anyway, that was part of the complaint that this program was not being ruled on in a timely. These applications weren't being looked at in a timely manner. And that was Betsy DeVos was actually named by name in that lawsuit as being completely guilty of dereliction of duty in that way. And there were a lot of other things with her that I did not like. There were things about her that we liked as conservatives. She was a conservative, and had a background in that. And but when she got in there were a lot of things that were not good. She was not a good education secretary, and we need to admit that. And we can go through some of those things one day, maybe on the show. But I've probably raised the hackles of a lot of people out there by now, so I would like to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Send me an email, benmccoyshow@gmail.com, or look me up on Twitter @benmccoyshow, and because I want to know what some of my conservative listeners out there think about all this. If you think I'm completely wrong with my analysis, or if you agree, or whatever, I'd like to hear from you on it. But I just do want to urge you not to paint everybody with a broad brush. We can paint Biden with a broad brush that his ideas are terrible, including this loan forgiveness thing. There's better ways to go about offering some sort of relief. And one thing, a lot of these universities' endowments are worth, billions and billions of dollars. Why not have them foot the bill for some student loan relief? Somebody someday is going to investigate the way this whole racket works, because I, for one, attending online university and having to take out the amount that I could have gone to in-state brick and mortar school, that doesn't make any sense. To have an online where everything's online, there's no buildings and campus and just, thousands of faculty and all these things it takes to run an actual university. And yet they command the kind of dollars that an actual university would command for students to attend. And that right there is criminal to me. And I hope one day all this gets sorted out. But that's where we are right now with that issue. What else do we got? Oh, the old Trump mar-a-lago-raid is, that's starting to get interesting. As you know and are well aware of the midnight raid on Mar-a-Lago, dozens of armed agents armed to the teeth to take away some boxes of papers, because that's what it was all about. The National Archives didn't get their boxes of papers that were in the Trump possession, and so they sent the FBI down there to raid the place. And this is just the most absurd and ridiculous story you've ever heard in your life. And now we know why they didn't want to, why they sealed the affidavit and did not want to publicize what was in it, because there's nothing in it. You have a statement by an unknown FBI agent saying he believes this and that are occurring, and and that's why we need to get this, to get a raid down there going to Mar-a-Lago and get all these documents that they're saying, these heavily classified documents. One that they're overlooking in all of this. Everybody in the United States, every citizen in the United States is subject to the Espionage Act and many other laws having to do with classified documents and the handling of classified documents and the criminal penalties for mishandling and this and that and the other thing, all except one person. There's one person that's an exception to all that, and that's the President of the United States. The President of the United States has the constitutional authority to declassify any document that he so desires at any given moment, at any time, for any reason. That's just a very powerful tool that the president has at his disposal. So all of these documents came into President Trump's possession while he was, in fact, President Trump. Therefore, he could have just waved his hand over all of it and said it's now declassified to a lower level of classification, and there's now no more issue with me having them in boxes at Mar-a-Lago. So all of this is it's overkill. This is a fishing expedition. And if you can't tell that by now, you're either just so partisan, ideologically locked to the left, or completely blind and not paying any attention. This is a fishing expedition. They are doing all they can to get some kind of felony charge pinned on Trump so that he will be ineligible to ever run or hold any kind of office again. That's all this is about. It's not about upholding the law and all these kind. I mean, when do you send the FBI down there for an archives request to anybody's house, to an ex-president's house for an archives request? Because it's in the affidavit where it's the National Archives requested the Department of Justice. I mean, the National Archives is like the National Park Service. It's like saying the National Park Service contacted us and said that the former president may have a couple of brown bear cubs that he found at a national park, and he's not feeding them 3 times a day, and we need the FBI to go down there and check it out and bring back. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, it's the National Archives. I mean, come on, it's like a low level. I mean, they do important work, but in the grand scheme of things, with all the agencies and departments and cabinets of the federal government, National Archives, it's not really high on the list. These were things that were already being handled with phone calls and emails. They had called President Trump back in February of this year. Hey, you got some stuff down there we need. Hey, no problem. It was this cordial thing that he was willing. They said at every level he was willing to work with them, anything they needed. He invited them down there. At one point, they came down there. They saw everything he had. And they said, man, this is great. We can't take it all back right now. What we want you to do is put it in a room under a lock and key, and we'll come back and get it. He said, hey, no problem. And they did exactly that, and everything was good to go until the night the FBI showed up and kicked in the door. I mean, you can't defend this on any level. Let's see. Going through some more notes I've got. These are records in his possession. As president, that he could, like I said, deem a lower classification. The issue at the heart of this affidavit is that the agent, quote unquote, does not believe that any spaces on the premises are currently authorized for storage of classified documents. That's actually in the affidavit. That when you actually it might be like the last page of the affidavit. When you boil it all down, this is what this raid is all about. This is what this warrant is all. This judge's order to search the premises is all about. That they don't believe the documents that they know are there. They've already been documented. They've already had the National Archives and Department of Justice down there to Mar-a-Lago to see what he's got, and here's the boxes of it, and they've all looked at it. They know it's there. They know everything is cool. They asked him to keep it under lock and key. But they don't believe that it's being properly stored. That it actually says that in the heavily redacted affidavit, where we can't read hardly anything going on. I mean, they're keeping it all under wraps. What they don't want us to see, it's just black page after black page when you read this 38-page affidavit. But the few parts that we can see at the very end, it says that this agent, whoever wrote this thing, doesn't believe that the places that these documents are being stored are currently authorized for storage for classified documents. That's what this is about. For that, you get dozens of heavily armed to the teeth FBI agents raiding a former president's home. I mean, this is going to be studied for years. I cannot wait for people to start going to jail over how they are weaponizing the FBI and the Department of Justice to go after their political rivals. This is it's beyond criminal. It's evil. It's unreal. And if a Republican was doing it, I would say the same thing. I mean, you look at Nixon. Nixon weaponized a small portion of the federal government to simply spy on the other guy, not to harm them, punish them, eradicate them, just to spy and see what they were up to. And it was illegal. And it was wrong what he did. And look at the fallout. I mean, Watergate is still something that we look at and talk about. And, Nixon is still a pariah in many people's minds. He didn't even weaponize everything. He just used a small, some agents here and there and a small portion of the federal government to conduct absolutely illegal spying operations. That's all. It was spying. I mean, they are utilizing major branches of the federal government to intimidate and to browbeat political rivals into submission, and nothing's being done about it. It's unbelievable that this stuff can go on. It drives me crazy. Now, as far as Trump, I cannot take the meltdowns about Trump anymore. I think he was a great president, and if he runs again, I'm going to vote for him. I kind of hope somebody else steps in and gets his blessing, and kind of brings the whole Trump machine over to, somebody like DeSantis, who's a lot less of a polarizing figure, but is a very, very smart guy with a lot of great ideas. He's done a great job as governor of Florida. I would love to see him step in and run for president with Trump's endorsement and blessing. I think that would be a great scenario, and that's kind of what I hope happens. But Trump believes he's the best guy to do any job there is to get done, and he's probably going to run again. And I got to tell you, I'll vote for him. It's not like I'm not vote for him. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of their completely insane meltdown mode over everything Trump all the time and weaponizing the entire government to go after him and his supporters. It's unbelievable. It makes me sick. Anyway, let's see, what else do we got? Oh yes, the old drag show in Texas for kindergartners. I bet you hadn't heard about this one. Some crazy group, I don't even know who. I mean, these people, they're coming after your children, okay? It's obvious. They want your children. I don't know what they want with your children, but it ain't good. This whole transgender, gender-affirming crap, it's all a cover for going after the children. They want the souls of the children. They want your children to be transgender. They want them to not know what they are. I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm both, I'm neither, whatever. Non-binary and all these words they have. And now they're even putting on these shows, even in a state like Texas. I mean, this happened in a place called Roanoke, Texas. Some group put together a drag show for the kiddies, and you have these god-awful parents out there actually taking their children to this thing. You can't even believe it, but it's full of kids, and there's men dressed as disgusting fat women dancing around taking dollar bills from these people, and it's all a show for the kids, they say. And residents and citizens in the area were rightly disturbed by the goings on there and showed up to protest. Well, guess who showed up to defend the drag show for kiddies? None other than our friends at Antifa, who were heavily armed with rifles and other weapons, dressed in their lovely and cuddly black costumes and their rainbow flags and everything else, and they're guarding like the entire restaurant, bar, whatever this place was that they were holding this thing at, trying to intimidate citizens. Do not mess with the kiddie drag show, because this is what our agenda is all about. Why would Antifa care? Why would they care if somebody's having a drag show for kids? It's obviously, this is part of the progressive left's agenda, and they're all on board with it. And that's what they want. And they are going after the children. These are groomers that are trying to get a hold of your children's mind. I'm telling you, keep a close eye on your children, and even closer eye on everybody else that's got an eye on your children. Because it's scary out there. And why any parent, man, I would love to do an interview with a parent who brought their kid to the drag show for kids. I would like to know what's going on in that kind of brain. These people are they are bought and sold on this LGBT transgender agenda that thinks it's all about love and inclusion and all these things that are just so wonderful, just gender affirming, and I'm a boy today and a girl tomorrow, and you've got all these teachers talking about, I've got 6 non-binary students in my class. What? Where did all this come from? I mean, we went, I don't know how many hundreds, I mean, even going back to when I was a kid, I mean, you never heard of anything like this. You didn't even have it in the closet. There wasn't any kids that were like I'm actually transgender, but I'm scared to come out. Nobody even thought of anything like that. You had homosexuality was the only thing that was on the radar screen at any level, and it was, it was there, and it didn't take over anybody's life. It wasn't like anything that, they had these huge waves of support for everywhere. It's just, it is what it is. Nobody, I'm sure that, of course, there were certain pockets of the country that were very anti-homosexual and, went after people that were gay and that kind of thing at one time. But that was not the way it was in large part. Even in the South in the 80s and 90s, and people just kind of, whatever. But it didn't become this calling card of an entire movement of the culture and an entire generation where it's in your face all the time, and you either accept it and join the team, or you're an evil fascist. And you can hear, the Antifa people shouting, "You fascist," to anybody who doesn't support the grooming of children at the kiddie drag show. So how does that make you a fascist? To not want children exposed to this kind of just god awful, I don't know what you even call it, insanity. That makes you a fascist. You're a fascist. And that tells you everything you need to know right there. That is a main agenda of the progressive left today. I don't know what they did. They want to just turn your kids' minds into goo, where they don't know what they are, who they are, what they're doing. All they know is that they're a progressive leftist zombie that just goes into every election voting for the left. It's scary. It's scary, folks. It's just scary out there. That's all I know. So yeah, go look up that story, the Roanoke, Texas kiddie drag show, and just get a vomit bucket nearby, because you're going to need it. I can tell you that. What else? I think that's really about all we got for today. It's going to be a shorter show today, because I got everything in that I wanted to say, and it's just me, and I got nobody else to talk to. Let me know. I like the feedback we're getting on the show. Tell everybody about it. Please follow and share and all that good stuff. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Ben McCoy Show. God bless.